Hello, my name is Nelita V. I'm an actress, a martial artist, an entrepreneur, and a lot of other things, but I live here in Los Angeles, California. So growing up, I have a lot of inspirations that I pull on. The first two would be my parents. They're amazing. They are amazing still to this day. I like to say that everything that I am and who I am is because of them. And another heavy influence was my Lola, whose name is also Nelita as well. My Lola is Filipino, actually, as I'm saying this, and my dad is Filipino, my mother is Black American. So I had a very interesting upbringing because I had this dynamic of being multifaceted in many ways, not only because of the differences in both of my parents, but also just ethnically. I pulled on my cultures from both sides. So I had a very eclectic way of looking at the world, and it just allowed me to explore.
My name is Span. I'm Nelita's mom.
I am Erwin, and I'm Nelita's father.
In the beginning, when she was around 1, her sister had started talking at 1. And so I'm thinking, like one, like the other. And so Nelita at 1 didn't talk, and going into 2, Nelita wasn't talking. And she used to just pull on my clothes, and I asked her what she wants, and she would point and share with me what she wanted. So I asked my mom, I said, she's not talking. Her sister talked, and my mom said she's not her sister. She'll talk when she's ready. And when she turned 2, everything just flooded out.
Growing up as a kid, I like to think of myself as just this big ball of energy. I was into learning, exploring, all over the place, and fun. I was a kid who wanted to learn everything, wanted to be around everybody, although my parents would probably say I was very quiet in the beginning. That's because I was just observing everything around me.
And so she was this energizer bunny, hopping around all the time. We used to try to turn the batteries off. And that's how we subdued her in the beginning, until the movie came out, Batteries Not Included. And she learned that slogan. So when we tried to do it and said, okay, we're taking your batteries out. And one day she turned to us and said, batteries not included.
Everyone always asks, so when did you start martial arts? And they assume it's a time like you're 5, 6, 7, 8. I like to say I learned to kick before I could walk. So I'm pretty sure you'll hear from my parents, but to their story, and I believe this story with all of my heart, is that when I was in the belly, they would say kick, or my dad would say kick, and I would kick on command. So that is when my martial arts training started. I started in the womb, in my mother's belly.
Erwin would take her, and as a little, like 6-month-old baby, kicking her legs up, kicking her legs up, kicking her legs up. So this was something that was instilled in her always. By the time she was 1, he was holding pads up and having her to kick. And back in those days, did it look like she was going to be as good as she is? No, it didn't, because she used to just grab him by the head, and he would keep counting, and the leg would be barely coming up. So it was a family lifestyle. So she was like immersed into this family lifestyle.
Growing up, I learned martial arts from my father, but also from my mother as well. She did martial arts at a young age. But it was a heavy influence on me. I love martial arts from day one, not only because of the physicality of it, but I understood that it was my culture. It was ingrained in me from my ancestors from times before, I was a very curious kid who, at a young age, would study the history of the Philippines and Lapu-Lapu and the battles of Mactan Island and these things. So I understood that what I was doing was not only just from this cool physical part where you see weapons swinging around, but this was something that my ancestors used to, protect their lands and protect each other. It's my ancestors' blood running through me. It's a way of storytelling. It's a way for me to share to other people who I am and where I come from. And that was just something really huge for me. Daddy is always and still is that person. I think this is where I kind of get that stuff from, is that whatever I see, I always think to myself, oh, I can do that.
You can do that.
And I'm always
Yes.
like, I look at something, even though it's not my expertise, I'll look
Yes.
at something, I'm like, I can definitely do
Yeah,
that.
you got that from your dad.
And I get it from Daddy, because I remember back in the day, we
Yes.
would go to Venice Beach
Yes.
all the time when we were kids, and we would like, every time we would walk around and see something,
Yes.
Daddy would look at something and be like, I can do that. So
I
I
can
think
do that.
I think
Yes.
one of the first ones was like those speed paintings. So this is when
Yes.
speed painting and all the spray paints
Spray
came out, and they would
painting,
draw
yes.
like the galaxies and the planets.
Yes.
And so people thought this was so amazing, and it was, but then I remember Daddy being out there, and it wasn't to demean anybody else, but he was just like, I could do that. My dad was always in the backyard training, other people or himself. Before there was a social media, that's what he did. He brought out a camcorder, whatever, beta. We started on beta tapes. I'm aging myself now, but I would always remember just seeing him move and out there and training himself and getting to his best ability. And the same with my mom. It was just something I always knew growing up, and I thought it was normal. I thought that was something that everyone did. It wasn't until probably I was a teenager and I would ask my friends like, hey, I'm gonna do this kick, do it with me. And they're like, we can't do what you do. We didn't learn that. And I was like, oh, not everybody had this. Not everybody carried a pocket knife on them at 8. Where I would go and I would train with my dad, but he also recognized that there were so many great things in other martial arts. Kind of like Bruce Lee said, that every art has something to offer. So he wanted me to have the best of the best. So not only within Filipino martial arts and him, doing Muay Thai and him doing Jeet Kune Do and all of those other disciplines that he trained me in, but he said, okay, I like this within Tae Kwon Do, so you're gonna go train at this school. So he would find the best teacher from that school and send me there. And then on top of this, my mom, she's a dancer in the family, and she's also the creative. So I like to tell people that movement is my thing. I think that martial arts and dance kind of intertwine together in movement, and that is another part of it that really helped me out and to understand my body was her teachings through dance, which she taught us at home. My Lola, to me in my eyes, is such a pioneer. We had a bond, and it's so crazy. I always say had, but I say that because that's what people know when someone passes away. She's no longer here physically on this earth, but I like to say have because I'm in contact with her every day. I feel her every day around me. I believe that she's all over and always with me. We had a very special bond that not everyone will know or understand, and not just because I was named after her, but even as a kid, I just clung to her. I wanted to know everything about our culture and where she came from, what she did. So she shared all of those stories with me about, being a child, having to go to school, and during that little lunch break that she had, having to go get money from her mom, who was, working, selling candles on the corner, to go buy rice, having to cook at an elementary age at home, cook the rice for her family because that's all they had, and then having to go right back to school. I always think about it as if she left everything she knew behind in hopes of not knowing where she would end up, how things would go. And she came and migrated to the US. She was such a pioneer and a leader at that time that even, where my family comes from, my Lolo side in Olongapo, in Surigao, they were too afraid to leave the Philippines at that point in time. And my grandmother came out to the US and did not only what a lot of people weren't doing at that time, but on top of that, she made sure that she did not leave her children behind. At the time when she left in 1969, she had my eldest aunt and my father at the time. She fought very hard and ended up getting them here, and on top of that was the inspiration for the rest of our family, even on into my Lolo side, for them to start to migrate and come to the US as well. My grandmother left the Philippines long ago, but to the day that she died, her work ethic, everything she did, she always made sure that she sent money home to her family and took care of them till the day that she died. And so that's another thing for me. It was like she never stopped thinking about her family. She never stopped that immigrant mentality of like helping them survive. That even though she had come here and she had made it and she had this wonderful life, that work ethic kept in her to the day that she died. I also found out later in life that my grandmother was a secret agent in the Philippines. And I'm like, my story can't get any cooler than that. So I in a way, I look back and I'm like, is this where some of my skills come from as well? It's from my Lola being a secret agent. So my dad shared stories with me as a kid of how he would see his mom training in the backyard, and she would go on these missions, I guess you would say missions, for the Philippine government. I share my story quite a lot regarding one of the hardest times in my life. And I use this phrase where I say, if there was a rock bottom, I didn't know how much further we could go because we had hit below that.
Well, I'm very proud of Nelita. She's accomplished a lot. I only wish that this had never happened to me because there's a lot more that I could teach her, and you know, it makes me sad, but.
When I was around 20, my dad was diagnosed with tuberculosis meningitis in his brain, which was undetectable by tests at that time where we were. And I'll fast forward the story, but the long story short was that because the doctors did not recognize the disease that he had, he ended up losing his memory at one point, all of his memory. Was almost like in a vegetative state, no movement, no talking. And I'm very, very close to both my parents, but with this bond with martial arts and my dad, you know, he's been my superhero my entire life. He still is, but at that time, you know, imagine your superhero not knowing who you are. To walk into a room and them not recognize you. It was very, very tough to have that happen and kind of have no hope. There was a moment in time, and I remember the doctor telling my mom, like, you know, cross your fingers, hope he lives.
I had two daughters who were going through hardships because of their father. Their father was their rock, he was their world. I was, and I'm trying not to tear up, I was the wife who saw this strong person, person that could do anything, person who had so many talents, literally succumb. Doctors misdiagnosed him at a first hospital, and we were sent to another hospital saying that he had a tumor in the brain. And they knew that he had something in his brain, that it was running down the middle of the brain and that the brain was swollen. And so as they continued to try to seek to find out what was the problem, he stroked. He stroked twice. And so I had to endure him stroking, hydrocephalus. He had 2 times that's water on the brain, seizures, and all of this I carried because I had to be the pillar of strength for my children. Then they told me that he was in the 4th and final stage of tuberculosis in his brain when they finally figured out what it was, and that I should prepare myself because he was at the highest percentage to die, and that I should cross my fingers for good luck.
You know, we lost our home. We lost every physical possession that people could think of. And that was that point where it's like, well, what is this? You know, where else can we go? We don't have a house. If we don't have our baby pictures anymore because we lost that, then where else could we go? There was a point in time in life then where I took it the hardest. I became depressed. I felt like no one was there for us. I felt like we had nothing else. And I had a choice to make. I could stay there and have all these horrible thoughts and these horrible feelings, or I could choose to look at life a different way. And that was the turnaround for my life where I said, okay, these things happen. You know, you can't take it back. You can't change it. Maybe they are the way they are. And it started me on my journey of like just accepting what life was, and now how will I react to that? How will I make my own choices? How will I make myself happy? How do I continue to live and to thrive and make a change for my family? And I had to find that within myself, and part of that was using my culture, using my art when I had no money. A memory that really stands out to me is when I was a kid and my dad said, Nelita, I'm not only teaching you martial arts so you can know how to defend yourself and take care of yourself if you need to. He said, if ever you don't have a job, you don't have money, you don't know what to do, you can use this. You can teach somebody, you can go do all these sort of things. And in that moment when my dad could no longer physically take care of us, that's what I did. That's what I used. I went out, I started training people. I used every bit of knowledge that he ever gave me to be able to share with others. And it turned my whole life to where I not only survive in this world, 2021, I thrive in this world because of what this gift that my dad gave me. I ended up in Dubai because I wanted a change in life. Simple as that. That's the biggest thing I say. I had been through a lot through my dad's, illness at the time, and even the recovery that he had, because we tend to see the illness, but after someone in a way recovers, you still have to recover in life from that. So we had gone through a hard time even after being cured of the disease.
When Nelita left for Dubai, we didn't see it coming, but we had actually raised them to want to get out, because I came from all the way across the United States from North Carolina. He came from the Philippines to North Carolina, and we came before we ever had children to California. We knew that if we brought them here, that they could have the desire to be whatever they wanted to be, to seek whatever they wanted to seek, or to go wherever they wanted to go.
It was a place where I felt as if life wasn't working out for me in the way that I felt it should have been working out. And I was on this search of just being happy. When you put things into this world, it does come to you when you put the work in. So I had mentioned earlier in the year, like, hey, I would love to visit Dubai. I've never been there before. I don't know what this is. I had never really heard of it. I knew my mom back when I was a kid worked for the United Arab Chamber of Commerce in the States. But other than that, I didn't really know much about Dubai. And I remember meeting a young lady who was a trainer at the time. She said, you would actually do really well in Dubai. She was like, there's no one else that does what you do, male or female, within martial arts, and you can make a lot of good money. that was basically it. She was like, you can make a lot of good money in Dubai. And I was like, huh. So I went out there. I took a job opportunity out in Dubai, but I said, I'm going to be doing something else, and I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to give this a try for a year. And that sounds simple as it is, because I really actually didn't just say, hey, I want to go to Dubai. I was scared. I was fearful of leaving everything behind that I ever knew, all my friends, all my family, all these things. And I remember having this friend, and she looked at me, her name is Michelle. She said, Nelita, La Brea is still gonna be La Brea. Crenshaw is still gonna be Crenshaw. She was like, the worst that can happen is that you don't like it and you come back. Go see the world, go enjoy, and come back and tell us stories. And I was like, she's right. I was like, let me go. So I packed 5 bags and I left to Dubai. I started, working with some VIPs and some high-level people out in Dubai, but it was all through, again, my martial arts, which my dad told me that I could use to make a way for myself. And in Dubai, it was amazing. I enjoyed my time there. I was there for about 4 years. I got to meet some amazing people, and not only through the martial arts, that in turn kind of sparked this kind of social media thing for me, because it's a smaller market out there. Plus, again, there's no one who does what I do, male or female. So it became this thing like, oh, I got booked for this ad, I got booked for that ad, and just kind of rose within social media within Dubai.
Say something. Say something. Say something.
March of 2020, I got messages about my Lola. I was told that my Lola was not going to make it. It would be some days before she would pass, and I had to come home right away. And just as I came to Dubai with 5 bags, I left Dubai with 5 bags. I packed up everything I had, put some things in storage, sold off whatever I could, hopped on a plane to try to make it back to the US. And unfortunately, I missed my Lola by about an hour. I missed her by 1 hour traveling back. And I had this feeling of, I don't know if I ever want to be that far from my family anymore, to where it would be that long to get back to somebody. And then also, I don't believe that things necessarily happen for a reason, but they happen. And when I did arrive back into the States, this is when the pandemic and COVID just hit. And if I hadn't come back, I would have been stuck in a country where it was a 24-hour lockdown. I wouldn't have been able to leave, and I would have been by myself during this pandemic. And somehow I made my way back to the States, and I think that's because of my Lola that I came back to the States, and I was here, and I was able to be with my family during this time. It feels very odd to think of myself as a trailblazer within Filipino martial arts, especially as a female, but it's a term that I'm coming to accept and now kind of just be in awe in. It's interesting, I was talking to one of my other fellow practitioners, the other day, and we were sitting there, and it's, you know, this month in October, whenever we're filming this, is Filipino American History Month. And we said, isn't it so crazy to think that we are now the pioneers that get to move our culture forward in who we are, and we're able to create and write our own history, you know, through our platform. So to me, it's amazing, because I grew up in a time where not only not to be Filipino, but martial arts, there were really no female martial artists out there doing it. I think if I can remember anyone, it was Cynthia Rothrock that I used to look and I was like, I want to be like her, and I want to be in the martial arts films and have this and that. And I think about mainstream media today, when you think about the biggest action stars in the world, I can't really name a huge female action star, particularly action star. I came into this world where I was on the search and I couldn't find anyone, so I said, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna do what I love. I'm gonna do what I've known to do my entire life and get my weapons out and start swinging them. But I like to say that I authentically share and hoping to reach someone or hoping to inspire, you know, some little girl who doesn't have that figure in her life, or that person that she can see on TV who's doing these sort of things, to say, hey, oh, I can do that too. I always hope to have that.
Making it in America to me means to find happiness, no matter what position of life you find yourself in. You know, it may not be the fulfillment of what you thought you would be, but to find happiness where you are. I always used to say to my husband, because we didn't know this was going to happen, but when we was in North Carolina, he wanted to come to California to pursue his dreams. And I said to him, we're going to go and we're going to seek it. And because when we grow old, I don't want to hear you ever say, I wish I had, I wish I had. I want to hear you say, I gave it my best shot. And so I believe that he gave and we gave it our best shot. And we have found happiness in that. And we've found happiness in a beautiful daughter, two beautiful daughters, and a daughter that's pursuing in the same legacy of her father. And so life and making it in America is finding happiness.
This is a great country, and I love being here, and I look back on my life in the Philippines. It's very hard, you know, especially when I went back to see it. But when you're a kid, you know, you don't see all that, you just have fun. But I didn't realize how hard it was until I went back. And so it's very rewarding to me being in the United States, the land of opportunity.
Making it in America means to me being authentically myself, being able to share, being able to create, and being able to thrive without the thoughts of repercussions, without the thoughts of what may happen, but just being free to be me.